Hi, this is Steve from GSX, and welcome to our video series about GSX Monitor and GSX Analyzer. There'll be a whole bunch of videos issued in the next few weeks. Some will be very detailed, some will be more general, some will be about different platforms. So I'd suggest that you subscribe to our RSS feed off of our blog so you can keep an eye on new ones when they come out. And without further ado, let's get into the content. Thanks. Okay, so this is BES monitoring part number 3. It sort of assumes that you've watched parts 1 and 2, and in part 1 we talked about the main view, which is the real-time admin dashboard that shows us the condition of our servers, whether they be just BES or BES in Exchange or BES in Domino or whatever combinations you might have. And then in part 2 we spent a lot of time on server settings and all of these columns that define our scan frequencies and retry intervals, etc. And we did not get into advanced settings, and that's what we're going to do here today. So the advanced settings column actually gives us this pop-up window where we have 3 different tabs that do different things. The first one is we establish what version of the BES server we're running, whether it's BES 5 as you have here, or BES Express, or BES 4.1, or whatever we might happen to be using. And obviously the services, the underlying services, would change depending on which one we've selected, because there are different services available in each of those versions of the BES server. And we would check off, of course, here which are the services that we indeed want to make sure are running, and then GSX Monitor will cyclically go through that as it's checking on that server with the settings that we talked about before. Also, we can identify if a service is running on a different server, and we can identify that server here so GSX can find it and confirm that it is indeed working. The database tab allows us to identify the SQL database, so of course we can confirm that it's running, establish our credentials to connect to confirm that it's up and running, as well as to allow us to connect to gather our usage statistics and a lot of the data we use, which we kind of like to get it as close to the point of creation as possible, and generally try to avoid using log files for the gathering of statistics and monitoring information. We, of course, also monitor log files, and we certainly do that, and we'll show you that later over here on the log tab. But what we're doing here is connecting to SQL. Now, if you're using high availability and you've got a cluster, so you've got a pair of clustered servers, a primary and a standby, you may also choose to use the high availability mirrored SQL option. And of course, we'd also be able to establish that. It's not enabled because we don't have one set up in our test data here, but that's where you would set that up as well. And then finally, the user alerts tab, which would allow us to set up where our user alerts, or how we're watching our users rather, and therefore what creates a user alert. We're going to go over and look at the main view and look at user alerts when we're done, because we skipped that when we went through that in session number 1. So the first thing is we have a list of users, and this is only got 10 or 12 people here because this is our test database, but let's say that Antoine is our CEO, because in fact he really is, and Eileen Fitzgerald is also a priority person, and Vincent is a priority person, and whomever else we have. So in this example we have our regular users and our critical users. You get to decide who they are. It could just be ranking executives. It could be people in your sales force. I don't know. It's really kind of up to you. But what we now have is 2 populations of users, which allows us to watch each population through a lens, if you will, that we can establish here. So this lens, if you will, is watching that every single person on this list has less than 4 pending messages, or if they have more than that, we're going to invoke the super important VIP Big Shot BES team alert profile. Remember, we looked at alerts in part number 2, so I won't go through that again, but we have this particular profile which notifies people in a certain way, and we're doing that 24/7 for our critical people if they go outside of these criteria. So we're just going to use the simplest one here, more than 4 pending messages. So for non-critical people, in this example, we don't even have it turned on, but let's say we wanted to turn it on and we wanted to just be a lot less sensitive. So if anybody in this list has more than 4 messages, we don't care until they get up to 57 plus, and then we're going to start notifying some other team perhaps. So instead of the super important Big Shot BES team alert profile, let's say we use the standard BES team, and then we only trigger these alerts if it happens during business hours, because in the middle of the night we aren't going to be concerned about this population of users. Obviously you have choices and you can do that as you wish. So going back to critical users, let's talk about the other criteria because we've got them turned on here. If less than a certain number of messages are sent or received in a certain time period, GSX is going to start to say something's up. So let's say that Eileen Fitzgerald gets less than 10 messages a day. Something's going on and we want to notify utilizing this alert profile and the things underlying what that does. So, by the way, I should tell you that these criteria are also correlated with device status. I can, of course, also look at people go into particular device statuses, but the example I'm talking about is, let's say Eileen Fitzgerald gets on an airplane to fly to Singapore for 22 hours. Clearly, her pending messages are going to jump above 4 very, very rapidly. So, in that situation, it would be a nuisance to you if GSX Monitor notified you that that was occurring. Well, it won't, because it's smart enough to correlate this criteria or this probe with the device status, knowing that it's been turned off, that's picked up by BES and picked up by GSX. So we would not care if that she went above 4 until she lands and turns her device back on. Then we're going to want to make sure that those pending messages flush down very, very rapidly. And if not, then we're going to go ahead and alert you. Now, we talked about user alerts, so let's go over back to the main view and look at where they would be displayed. Of course, we're going to alert you proactively and notify you. But if you remember, when we were back here, we talked about what a user alert was very briefly, and we didn't go on. So in this example, we have a yellow light in the user column, which is a problem indicator, and that's because there are 6 non-critical user errors. So if I wanted to find out what those were, I could drill down into user management and user status and errors and see the all those users on that particular server, and then I could see who's in error and what is the problem they're having to have, and I would see that right here. If I had a critical user in error, I would see a dark red warning light that somebody on the critical user list is in error, and I can drill down and see that. I can also drill down and get into usage, people's configurations, usage statistics, find unused devices, determine what handheld people have, and even add and remove users to make our provisioning process more easy. So we've gone long enough, I think. The next session, join us up for session number 4, where we'll talk about the BlackBerry probe. Thanks so much. Well, thanks for the time. Don't forget to keep an eye on our blog for the newest videos that will be coming out in the next few weeks. Subscribe to our RSS feed. It'll make it a lot easier. And bye-bye. Thanks.